But maintaining this posture of bending the waist, even for high-level practitioners, it was an extremely tough matter. Besides that the ache was secondary, to be left in the cold by someone like that, in such a humiliating posture, it was absolutely leaving his face onto the ground for them to step on. Fong Xiaoning only felt a fiery sensation on his face as he almost burned up. But now that matters had come to such a pass, under Li Moying's frigid cold stare, he didn't dare to stand up straight, nor did he dare to turn tables with Huang Yueli. A quarter of an hour went by, and Huang Yueli still didn't make any sound to accept his apology. By now, Celestial Light Sect's disciples had all started laughing. "Great job, junior sister Bai. Show him some colors." "That's right. The last time at the arena stage, he obviously had the intention to kill you. What's called accidentally mishandled. Why don't you go lie to a ghost?" "Correct. If apologizing is of use, then what's the use of having constables around?" Fong Xiaoning was so angry that his chest started to hurt, and a slight taste of blood could be tasted in his mouth. Huang Yueli waited for a while more before she opened her mouth indifferently. "Master Fong, why so modest? I hadn't put the matter regarding the arena stage in my heart, so you need not specially apologize for it." Fong Xiaoning was simply going to faint from anger. Didn't put it in her heart, then still left him in the cold like that? This was simply having it both ways. However, before he opened his mouth, Huang Yueli continued, "But my own matters, I can forget about it. However, you had defamed our Celestial Light Sect, and even injured so many Celestial Light Sect's disciples. This matter cannot be let off easily like that." Fong Xiaoning clenched his teeth. Then, "Miss Bai, what do you want me to do?" Huang Yueli laughed. "I've always been magnanimous and won't force my requests on anyone. If you're really regretful, then apologizing to all those poor disciples whom you had injured earlier will do. Earlier, when you apologized to me, your attitude was rather earnest, so you must use the same kind of attitude towards them. I believe that they will forgive you." Huang Yueli was beaming, and her tone was gentle. The words which she spoke out were courteous and polite without any fiery power to it. Neither did it consist of any sense which made things difficult for him. But every single one of those present understood the meaning in her words. All of them were trembling in fear, secretly thinking that this method of hers was just too vicious. Fong Xiaoning saw black and almost fainted. Actually, to apologize to Huang Yueli, although he did feel humiliated, but it was still acceptable. After all, Huang Yueli had once defeated him directly on the arena stage, which meant that her innate talent and ability was far above his. To bow one's head low towards the strong wasn't an embarrassing thing. But what Huang Yueli wanted now was for him to apologize to those ordinary disciples who were injured by him. What kind of joke was that? These people were all defeated by him and couldn't even take on one move from him. What right did these trash had to deserve his apology? Towards these kind of lowly, trashy people, it was a waste of effort to even beat them up, and there was no reason for the strong to apologize to the weak. Moreover, Huang Yueli requested for his attitude to be as earnest as earlier. How to be earnest? Surely he needed to be left in the cold by so much trash, and to bend his waist and lower his head towards these trash? This was even more unbearable than taking his life. Fong Xiaoning simply couldn't endure it any further. "Miss Bai, please don't bully others intolerably. To fight over treasures in mystic regions had always been based on one's own ability. This is the rule in Soaring Heaven's continent. Who can they blame when their abilities are so weak?" You can also listen on. When Huang Yueli heard that, she shot a glance at him, and her lips curled up slightly. "You're talking to me about rules? Since that's the case, then let's handle this according to Soaring Heaven's continent's rules." She paused and continued. "Master Fong should know what is the general outcome for the party who is on the losing end of fighting for treasure in mystic regions, right?" When Fong Xiaoning heard that, he suddenly thought of something as his face turned pale. "You're not thinking of," Huang Yueli smiled as she continued. "You're the one who said to handle this according to rules." Quite a number of Green Cloud Sect's disciples all understood the meaning in her words as their complexions turned even paler. But Luo Jian was totally puzzled. Little sister-in-law, what do you mean by that? What's the outcome for those who failed in fighting for the treasure? Huang Yueli smiled. What else? In order to prevent those people who failed from intentionally leaking out news of the treasure, eliminating them is the entire soaring heaven continent's common way. For someone like him who dares to make impertinent remarks, just burying him alive in a pit is considered as showing mercy. Fong's shouting abruptly had a change of colors. By Raoli, you don't even think just threatening me like that, and I'd be afraid. Do you have the guts to do so? We have so many people here, and they're all Green Cloud sect disciples. Can you kill us all? Aren't you afraid that when the matter is exposed, our sect master would blame you for it? Huang Yueli blinked her big eyes. But if you're all dead, how would the matter be exposed? But there are so many of us. How could you possibly? Fong Shouning's words were by his mouth when he suddenly saw the cold face Li Moying behind Huang Yueli, as he immediately shuddered, not daring to speak any further. Huang Yueli indeed couldn't possibly kill them all, but Li Moying indeed had this ability to do so. Moreover, he had always been fearless, resolute in his massacres. If he were really to eliminate them all, he would absolutely be efficient in not leaving any person alive. Li Moying gave a cold humph as he slowly walked towards Huang Yueli and opened his mouth. Do according to what Miss Bai said, otherwise, his voice was very soft, but when it fell onto Green Cloud sex people's ears, it sounded like a demon's voice from Hades. Especially when he spoke, his surrounding might was also unleashed at the same time, and in an instance, an intense suppressing feeling caused everyone present to be unable to breathe as their legs went weak. Those practitioners with weaker cultivations instantly couched onto the ground, not able to climb up at all. Fong Shouting was appalled, as he didn't dare to say anything more. He immediately walked to the front of Luo Jiyun as he suddenly bowed, clenching his teeth as he said, Master Luo, I've offended you earlier, so please be magnanimous to forgive me. Luo Jiyun took a good look at Fong Shouting, who had acted as though he was on a world above others earlier on, and now how the tables have turned to suddenly bow humbly before him and seek his forgiveness. His mood was suddenly lifted as the humiliation and embarrassment which he felt earlier instantly disappeared into thin air. Fong Shouting, aren't you extremely complacent earlier? Did you think that my eldest senior brother was not able to reach here in time? Fong Shouting's anger. If he knew earlier that Li Moying was on his way here, he would have applied oil to his feet as he slipped away quickly. So how could it be possible that he still remained here? But now, nothing he said mattered anymore. Yes, it's all my fault. I'd like to ask Master Luo for your understanding. Fong Shouting almost crunched his teeth. Luo Jiyun then waved his hand. Forget it. Next time just remember to use your brain before you talk, because not everyone is as easygoing as me. After Fong Shouting was taunted for a moment, he felt extremely stuffed. But he had no choice but to reply, Thank you, Master Luo. You can also listen on. When this sentence was spilled out, Fong Shouting felt that he was especially wretched. Other people slapped his face, and he still thanked them for it. This, to a naturally arrogant, talented practitioner, was a huge humiliation. However, things had not come to an end. Luo Jiyun was just the beginning. Moreover, Luo Jiyun's character was kind, and he did not intentionally make things difficult for him. It was those other direct disciples from Celestial Light sect who were the toughest to handle, as many of them were meaner in their words than Luo Jiyun. If it was usual times, Fong Shouting would have exploded from anger long ago and would absolutely tear these insolent things to shreds. But now with Li Moying and Huang Yueli around, he could only swallow his anger in silence. The only comfort was after Huang Yueli took a look around. She suddenly opened her mouth. Why is Master Fong the only one apologizing? It seems that he is not the only one who beat them up, right? Looks like some people prefer to be buried alive. Green Cloud sect's other disciples originally thought of hook-winking them as they kept their heads low, not even daring to breathe loudly. In the end, they had not thought that Huang Yueli actually didn't forget about them. Helplessly, the other disciples could only follow Fong Shouting to line up and apologize to the others. Celestial Light sect disciples were extremely excited. Indeed, following young sect master around was different. No matter which peerless talent was present, as long as the young sect master was around, they only had the fate of bending down. He was really the peerless genius in the South Sky region. Momentarily, many of them started to envy Mo, E, and the rest. No wonder they were practitioners with such cultivations, but were willing to follow Li Moying around to be his shadow guards. Following this kind of master was simply too shiok. Some of them even started to have thoughts that if they had the chance to follow young sect master around, it'd be great. If it didn't follow young sect master, following Misba was not a bad idea as well. The fluctuating sounds of apologies did not consolidate Huang Yueli and Li Moying's thoughts on these people. Huang Yueli's gaze had always been on the entrance of the cave dwelling, as she frowned slightly before she started to ponder deeply. This was a lavish and spacious cave dwelling. Just the residence door itself was 10 meters tall, 5 to 6 meters wide, looking very stylish. Whereas on the topmost area of the door hung an inscribed board with some illegible words on it. Wu Ding. Looks like the religious name of the owner of this cave dwelling should be Wu Ding. Huang Yueli took a long look at it before she could tell what the words were. This kind of early historical words left behind in the ancient times were only recognized by those practitioners who had broad knowledge. Li Moying hooked her waist as he brought her into his embrace, asking in a mellow voice, "How is it? Can you tell anything from this? How should we enter from here?" In terms of battle, to awe the entire scene. Naturally, Li Moying had the greatest ability, but when it came to opening the mechanisms of cave dwellings, his Lier was a professional at it. Huang Yueli muttered softly, "This sage Wu Ding should be someone with an extremely powerful existence in the Cloudy Qilin clan. The mechanisms that he set up around the cave dwelling are almost all 8th grade and above. Even in ancient times, the armament masters who could set up 8th grade mechanisms were not commonly found. Furthermore, in the outer boundary of this cave dwelling is an extremely strong protection array." Li Moying smiled as he said, "It sounds like it's very difficult to manage, but my Lier will definitely have a way, right? You can also listen on." Huang Yueli raised her chin coquettishly. She wanted to say something when she suddenly heard a shuffle of hurried footsteps. Immediately following that, a man's voice rang. "Stop! All of you stop! What are you doing?" Fong shouting, "You actually bow to these celestial light sects trash? Green Cloud sect's face has all been thrown away by you." Huang Yueli and Li Moying exchanged glances as they turned back together. Lung Yifeng came travel-worn as he walked out of the forest in quick steps, grabbing onto Fong Shouning's elbow. "What are you doing? The few of you stop immediately." Fong Shouning stopped his bowing actions when he saw Lung Yifeng's appearance, but his face still bore a terrified and tensed expression. "Eldest senior brother, that? Young sect masterly, what? Li Moying?" Huang Yueli and Li Moying had already walked towards the cave dwelling and were standing at a blind spot, and only under Fong Shouning's pointing out did he finally see them. Li Moying gave a cold humph as he said, "Mr. Lung, my apologies, you've arrived too late. This cave dwelling belongs to the Celestial Light sect already." Lung Yifeng was so furious that he could only clench his teeth. When he saw the bright light, he knew that a rare treasure was going to appear, so he didn't bother about the plan to scheme on Li Moying as he rushed over at the first moment. But too bad he was still too late. Li Moying had snatched it first. With Li Moying around, things were so evident, and he didn't possibly have the chance to pick up any advantages. Lung Yifeng wasn't resigned to leave, and on turning his head back, he saw a lot of his junior brothers and junior sisters with ashen faces as he asked loudly, "Young sect masterly, you're wrong in saying that. There's not only Celestial Light sects people here, there are plenty of Green Cloud sects disciples here too. As the saying goes, those who see it have a part. So we should have a share in the treasures in the cave dwelling as well." Fong Shouning and the rest originally didn't have any more hopes with regard to the treasures, but in the end, when Lung Yifeng finally arrived, they started to have some hopes again. Lung Yifeng's ability wasn't Li Moying's match, but as his status was special, Li Moying wouldn't kill someone from the Lung family, right? Perhaps he might even give Lung Yifeng some face, distributing some over to Green Cloud sect. Fong Shouning was the first to react. Eldest senior brother, we are just too pitiful. Earlier we had a chance to enter the cave dwelling, but in the end, when young sect master Lee brought his fiancée along, he immediately chased us away and forced us to bow and apologize. His words were obviously toppling black into white, hinting that Lee Moying wanted to snatch the treasures in the cave dwelling. Celestial Light sect's disciples immediately disagreed as they all started hooting. Fong shouting, "You're too shameless. This cave dwelling was obviously discovered by us first, and the ones who wanted to snatch the treasures are you guys. If it wasn't for young sect master who had arrived on time, we would have really been plundered by your gang of robbers. How dare you fabricate such stories?" That's right, who's forcing who? Even if you were forced to apologize, it was because you deserved it. Of course, Lung Yifeng knew that Fong Xiaoning's words had a problem, but he continued along with his flow. Young sect master Li, you've also heard this. Celestial Light sect to have done this. Isn't it a little too dishonorable? Li Moying replied coldly, since we're already here in the mystic region, what's the talk about being honorable or not? Lung Yifeng, surely you're not such a naive person, right? You can also listen on. Lung Yifeng said, our two sects had always been in a cooperative relationship, and were different from the other powerhouses' relationship, where they have open and hidden battles with rare treasures. Should we mutually discuss the distribution of it? You want to hold it all for yourself? What's the difference between snatching over it? Indeed, there's no difference. Lung Yifeng had not imagined that Li Moying would readily admit to it, so he was stunned for a moment. However, immediately following that, Li Moying said icily, what can you do if I want to snatch? What can you do if I want to snatch? Light fleeting words, but it was sonorous. In an instance, it made Lung Yifeng's face totally red as he couldn't say a single word. This was a real blue strong practitioner. Under absolute advantage in terms of ability, any attempts on flowery words was useless. Even if he obviously wanted to snatch and to monopolize it, who dared to say a no word? This was just too arrogant. But Li Moying indeed had the capital to be arrogant. At this moment, Lung Yifeng truly felt that although he was a direct descendant of the Lung family, and was considered as the chosen one, but in front of Li Moying he was as small as a grain of sand. Li Moying said coldly, bring along your green cloud sect's people and scram. Lung Yifeng felt humiliated, especially in front of Huang Yueli, who was the person whom he admired, and to be slighted by his love rival. It made him extremely unbearable. But Lung Yifeng had no other choice but to self-hypnotize himself. No matter how powerful Li Moying was, how wild and arrogant he was, he could only be rampant for this short moment. After their plan succeeded, when Li Moying entered the center region, by then he'd be a dead man. Even his fiancée would be taken in by himself. After self-hypnotizing himself for a moment, Lung Yifeng finally calmed down as he prepared to bring his men to depart. Just at this moment, Fong Xiaoning popped out by the side as he urged, eldest senior brother, we might not need to leave. We can still discuss this. Lung Yifeng shook his head. Forget it, it's impossible. He was the only one in Green Cloud sect who had crossed hands with Li Moying so many times, and he knew that once Li Moying decided on something, it was impossible to change his mind. However, Fong Xiaoning suddenly turned towards Li Moying as he shouted, young sect master Li, I apologize for the earlier matter that had happened, but you cannot chase us away, because without us, you can forget about entering this cave dwelling. Li Moying wasn't able to reply in time, but Huang Yueli had already gave a cold laugh filled with disdain. That's interesting. We can't enter this cave dwelling, but you guys can. Fong Xiaoning replied, Miss Bai, I know you're a certified armament master, and you probably have in-depth knowledge regarding mechanisms. But it's not possible that you can't tell that there's not only mechanisms around the cave dwelling, but also high-grade array formation. You need the coordination of an array master before you can enter the cave. Huang Yueli's brows rose. Array skills? So what about that? Did you think that a mere array can stop me? Fong Xiaoning's face suddenly showed a meaningful smile. Miss Bai, did you think that you've brought along a talented array master along, so there's nothing to fear? Such a pity because you're wrong. The only person who can decode the array in your Celestial Light sect is already in our Green Cloud sects team. Huang Yueli went into a blank. What do you mean? Fong shouted to the back. All right, stop hiding. You don't have anywhere to hide now anyway. A figure nudged out from the tree, behind shaking with fear and trepidation. You can also listen on. Everyone's eyes fell onto that person as the crowd started to gasp. Murong and I? Isn't that Murong and I? Why is she together with Green Cloud sex people? Strange. When did she reach this place? How come we didn't see her earlier? Was she hiding behind a tree since earlier? Surely it's not possible, right? Murong and I is the sect master's daughter. Hearing the fluctuating discussions, Murong and I felt her face burning up as she was embarrassed to the max. She had not imagined that things would have developed to such a state. Just a few days ago, she had been left behind by Murong Fei and, while she was traveling and exploring the cloudy Chilan Mystic region alone. As her ability was really just too low, she had already met with danger several times within the same day and almost lost her life. Luckily, Fong Xiaoning, who happened to pass by, had saved her. Fong Xiaoning originally didn't want to bother about this, but the desperate Murong and I boasted that she was South Sky region's most incredible array talent. She indicated that she was willing to join their team to help Green Cloud sex practitioners break through the array formations in the Mystic region. Whereas the younger generation of Green Cloud sect was indeed lacking a talented array master. That was why Murong and I was able to smuggle into Fong Xiaoning's team, gaining their protection. This time, on seeing the strong light from the faraway rare treasure, the entire group of them hurried over, and Murong and I was one of them among them, but she had not expected that so many of Celestial Light sects people were here to get hold of the treasure as well. When the disciples from both sects met, they started fighting for no apparent reason. Luckily, she reacted in time and hid herself, otherwise if anyone saw her, she would become Celestial Light sect's traitor. After that, things became more and more intense. So Murong and I totally didn't dare to reveal herself. She originally thought that she could hide until the end, and while no one noticed her, she could slip away quietly. Whoever knew that Fong Xiaoning, in order to gain a share of the rare treasure from Li Moing's hands, he actually sold her off without any hesitation, forcing her to appear in front of everyone. Murong and I was now feeling extremely melancholic. Huang Yuli's gaze stopped on her face for a short moment and spoke with a non-smiling smile. Mr. Fong, you really feel that? Murong and I is able to help decode the array formation outside the cave dwelling. Don't forget, this array formation is left behind during ancient times, and it's not something that ordinary people can decode. Fong Xiaoning was brimming with confidence. Of course, Murong and I is a third-rank array master. You Celestial Light people should be clearer on this than me. How rare it is to have a 17th-year-old third-rank array master. Surely I need not say more on this, right? If she is unable to decode this array formation, then there will be no more hope for anyone else. Huang Yueli gave a cold laugh in her heart as she questioned, how do you guys want to do it then? Fong Xiaoning thought that she had conceded and hurriedly added, Celestial Light sect's ability is stronger, no doubt about it, but our side is the crucial point to opening the cave dwelling. So the rare treasures in the cave dwelling should be split up into half each for both sects. Huang Yueli had not even responded when the other disciples already started crying out angrily. Half? You still want half? Do you know what is called shameless? Young sect master's one finger, and he will be able to crush you all to death. You still have the cheek to split the rare treasure? Isn't that so? You guys really think you're something? We're telling you, forget about it. Fong Xiaoning didn't have a change of expression as he said, this is a matter of benefits, so surely young sect master would not think clearly, right? You can also listen on. If you're not willing to cooperate with us, then you won't be able to get those treasures in the cave dwelling. As well, then we'd all have wasted our time today. This cave dwelling obviously has some heavyweight rare treasure, and if we just miss it like that, perhaps we might regret it for life. The correct choice would be for both our sects to cooperate together. Lung Yifeng gave Fong Xiaoning a thumbs-up glance as he spoke up for him as well. That's right. This is originally a reciprocity and mutual benefit matter. So why does young sect master need to hesitate? Of course, your abilities are much stronger, so we don't mind getting lesser. How about we split 60-40? How about that? We're showing enough sincerity, right? Li Moying looked at their delighted looks as he almost burst out laughing. Who or what gave these two fellows that kind of self-confidence? They actually felt that they could threaten him. How could his leader not match up to Morong and I? He had such an intelligent young fiancé, so he wouldn't be afraid of anyone's threat at all. However, when Li Moying was about to open his mouth, he suddenly saw Huang Yueli casting a signal to him with her eyes. He was stunned for a moment, not knowing what his fiancée had in mind, but he still obediently shut his mouth. Huang Yueli looked at Morong and I. Morong and I, your celestial light sect's disciple and sect master Morong's beloved daughter. You really want to stand on green cloud sects and betray your own sect? You have to think through this clearly. As expected, Morong and I started to reveal a hesitant and struggling look as she frowned. Fong Shouting saw that and immediately spoke out loudly. Morong and I, have you forgotten what you told me earlier? You said no one in Celestial Light's sect cares about you, and as long as I am willing to help you, you can help me in anything. Furthermore, you promised that you will follow me back to Green Cloud sect. Are you regretting it now? Morong and I hesitated and didn't say a single word. Fong Shouting spoke out again. You think that it's a good thing if you return to Celestial Light sect now? Originally, Li Moying and Morong Fei didn't want to bring you along for experience learning, and now that the others have ascertained that you're Celestial Light sect's traitor, even if you return, no one will treat you nicely. Perhaps you might not even survive to leave the Mystic region alive. But it's different if you follow me. So don't do anything which you will regret. Morong and I clenched her teeth as she said, Of course I will stand by Master Fong's side. Byrooli, stop trying to play the part of a good person. If it wasn't for you who dominated eldest senior brother, not allowing him to take care of me, how would I possibly have come to such a state? For me to act in this way is all because of you. Huang Yueli couldn't help but jeered. Morong and I, you're really funny. Practitioners who come out on experience, learning all relied on their own selves. You don't even have the courage to go on experience learning alone. You still have the cheek to claim that you're a practitioner? Morong and I gritted her teeth. Stop talking about those useless major principles. Eldest senior brother is deceived by you. Today, if Celestial Light sect suffers any losses, it's all your fault. Huang Yueli's expression turned colder by the minute. I've seen shameless people, but I've never seen anyone who is as shameless as you. Turning black into white. Don't you feel guilty at all? Moreover, did you think that you can threaten me? A third-rate array master who can't even set up a third-tier array, even though looking at the array formation drawing. What gives you the self-confidence to say that? Morong Ni's expression changed immediately upon hearing that. Right now, she suddenly recalled that this young lady in front of her also knew array skills and further. Her level of mastery in array skills seemed to be third rank and above. You can also listen on. Just a few months ago in the Dark Moon Forest, Morong and I had indeed witnessed Huang Yueli's mastery in array skills. Only thing was, recently Huang Yueli had shown too much in terms of armament, refining skills, and cultivation's innate talent, hence, most people had forgotten that she had other areas of shocking performance. Morong Ni's small trickery, in front of Huang Yueli, was really not enough. Morong and I suddenly recalled this, and instantly pressed the panic button. That's right, this wretched lass was so incredible, so actually they totally didn't need her. Morong and I then realized that this pit was dug by Huang Yueli. She intentionally misled her into thinking that she was very important, purposely luring her to say out the words of betrayal towards Celestial Light sect. Now Huang Yueli's motive had already been derived. Celestial Light sect's disciples looked at her as though they were looking at a disgusting cockroach, and she couldn't dismount the tiger anymore. It was apparently too late for her now to change her words, saying that she didn't have the intention to betray Celestial Light sect. But the minute Green Cloud sect's people found out that Huang Yueli's array skills mastery was higher than hers, then she would completely become a waste at Celestial Light Sect's side, so she definitely would not be able to get her previous position. The more Murong and I thought, the more frightened she got as sweat continued to drip down from her forehead. But Fong Xiaoning totally didn't know what she was worried about as he kept sneering. Miss Bai, your armament refining skills and cultivation innate talent is indeed very strong, but you really shouldn't go treating yourself as someone great. Array skill is also a difficult art, and not any simpler than armament refining. A third-rank array master is considered as an exceptionally outstanding talent. You have the cheek to say that she is a third-rate array master? Huang Yueli's brows rose. Oh, really? Then it means I'm the one who is ignorant and ill-informed, and I've belittled Miss Murong? Murong Ni's heart was palpitating wildly. The more Fong Xiaoning believed in her ability, the more frightened she was of being exposed. Right now, he had praised her to such a high level, so when she fell down, her fall would be terrible. Perhaps after Fong Xiaoning realized that he was fooled by her, he might even convert his embarrassment into anger, turning around to deal with her instead. What should she do? What should she do now? What should she say to make her not suffer from a miserable ending? Just as Murong Ni's heart was burning like a furnace, Huang Yueli spoke out again. All right, since the few of you from Green Cloud Sect had said that, Moying and I had done some observations earlier, and in order to open up this cave dwelling, we indeed require the participation of an array master. So it seems that we have no choice but to cooperate with you guys. Hearing her say that, Lung Yifeng and Fong Xiaoning both looked towards Li Moying. Young sect masterly, what do you say? Li Moying took a sideward glance at them. Hasn't my leader already said so? The both of them were stunned. The both of them asked because they felt that although Huang Yueli was Li Moying's fiancée, but in terms of ability and status, she naturally couldn't be compared to Li Moying himself. The person who could make decisions in Celestial Light Sect was definitely Li Moying, and whether to cooperate or not, Huang Yueli's words don't count at all. They still required Li Moying's consent. In the end, they had not expected Li Moying to have such a response. Could it be that in his heart, Huang Yueli was already able to represent him entirely? Such a powerful and arrogant man like him actually placed his fiancée in such a high status? This really made them feel hard to believe. After some time, Lung Yifeng responded, All right, since we've come to a mutual understanding, then we shall follow according to what we discussed earlier to open the rare treasure. Wait a minute, I'm not done talking yet. You can also listen on. Huang Yueli stopped him from continuing as she continued to add on. We can cooperate, but you have to prove that you are useful. Otherwise, you cannot expect us to let you have the advantages for free, right? Lung Yifeng frowned slightly. This, Miss Bai's meaning is, Huang Yueli said, very simple. Since you claim that Murong and I can decode the array outside the cave dwelling, then let her come out and have a try. If fact proves that she is really able to decode the array, then when we all enter the cave dwelling, we can share the treasures inside with you. But if she didn't manage to decode it, and after that we Celestial Light Sect manages to open up the cave dwelling, then we will not split any benefits with you guys. This was a reasonable request, so Lung Yifeng immediately nodded his head to represent that he agreed with it. Ken, this is the right thing to do. He totally had not realized the motive Huang Yueli had when she said these, only feeling that she was just saying a load of rubbish. From what he thought, if Murong and I had no way, then there was no way that the other people in Celestial Light Sect could open up the cave dwelling, so the question of splitting up the treasures wouldn't exist at all. After both parties came to an agreement, all of them looked towards Murong and I. Right now, she was the most crucial character on whether the two sects were able to come together for a cooperation and if they were able to enter the cave dwelling, which was the main point which everyone was concerned about. Murong and I had yearned for everyone's attention on her, commanding public respect and support for the longest time ever. But this time, she didn't have the slightest feeling of excitement or agitation. On the contrary, she was entirely stiff to the max, totally not knowing what she should do. Decoding an advanced historical array, how could it be that easy? Based on her mere third-rank array master standard, It was completely impossible for her to complete this difficult task. Only, if it were usual times, everyone would be able to understand if she wasn't able to decode it. However, right now, Huang Yueli made use of public opinion to coerce her, which was equivalent to placing her on the fire to roast, totally in a difficult position. Celestial Light Sect's people had completely turned tables with her, whereas Green Cloud Sect's people had placed all their hopes on dividing the rare treasures onto her. If she were to say that her ability didn't match up at this juncture and that she couldn't do it, then what was the outcome going to be? Murongni's forehead was filled with perspiration, but she could only brace herself as she walked to the side of the cave dwelling, starting to check on the situation of the surrounding array. Since things came to such a pass, she really had no way to retreat, hence the only thing she could do was to force herself to try it out. She walked one round around the cave dwelling's walls, carefully observing the walls and floor's array patterns. As she looked, she suddenly discovered something as her eyes instantly lit up. Originally, she had completely lost hope, but after really observing it, she realized in excitement that the array protecting the cave-dwelling surroundings was actually extremely advanced. Furthermore, this array looked rather familiar, as though there was no difference between the arrays which she had read from historical array ancient record recently. Murong and I originally didn't believe that there was such a good thing, so she suppressed her excitement in her heart as she retrieved an array board from her realm ring as she surveyed the surroundings several rounds, as she kept on deducing and calculating. Lastly, after repeated verification, she finally heaved a sigh of relief. It seemed that there was always a way out. Probably even that little slut by Rooli had not expected that this array outside the cave dwelling was that simple. And in fact, it so coincidentally happened to be something which she had once seen before. You can also listen on. What's the matter? After taking such a long time, how is it? Can you decode this array or not? Fong Xiaoning had turned impatient since some time ago, but he also knew that the process of deduction from an array master was very complicated and they needed to maintain a state of concentration, hence, he didn't dare to disturb Murong and I. Now on seeing Murong and I suddenly standing up, he finally couldn't help himself from asking. Murong and I gave a smile on her face. Mr. Fong, Mr. Lung, I've not let down the trust you had in me. This array, I happened to come across it some days ago in a historical ancient manual, and although the method to decode it is a little complicated, but I should still be able to do it. Fong Xiaoning and Lung Yifeng were extremely overjoyed. That's great. That's really too great. Miss Murong, your array skills innate talent is indeed very high to be able to decode this historical array easily. Murong and I was secretly feeling delighted when she heard that as the smile on her lips couldn't be suppressed. On the contrary, Celestial Light Sect's disciples were bearing despondent expressions as all of them were infuriated. Heaven really has no eyes. How did Murong and I really find the way to decode this array? Was her array skills mastery really that high? Murong and I had always bore the name of an array skill talent in South Sky region. So this isn't some surprising matter at all. But she is immoral. For a little bit of benefits, she even betrayed her own sect. Why did this kind of person become an array skill talent? Heaven really has no eyes. AI, we had finally gotten some resources, but now we have to split half to these sort of people. Just thinking about it makes me feel unresigned. No matter how Celestial Light Sect's disciples scolded her, but Murong and I was feeling delighted as she didn't feel upset at all. On the contrary, on seeing the disciples' angry expressions, she assumed that they must be feeling regretful. Who asked these people not to protect her, to bring her along on experience training, sending the treasures right to her? She chose the side which could let her gain more, which was just and right. She raised her chin as she looked at Huang Yueli. Miss Bai, really thankful to you. If it hadn't been for your help to raise the conditions for cooperation for both sides, I don't even know that my array skill standard was actually that high. Hearing that, Celestial Light Sect's disciples started sighing. AI, Miss Bai had really miscalculated this time. She had not expected Murong and I to really be able to decode the array, right? This time she had really moved the rock to smash on her own toes. Are we really going to split half of the treasures to Green Cloud Sect? That's right, it's just too infuriating. If we had known earlier, we wouldn't have agreed to some cooperation with Green Cloud Sect. I'd rather not have the treasure for myself than to let those villains from Green Cloud Sect benefit from it, especially for that traitor Morong and I. Morong and I looked at Huang Yueli in delight, assuming that she would be angrier than those ordinary disciples. But Huang Yueli's face hung a faint smile, which was totally out of her expectations. Really? Looks like you're really sure of it? Then I shall first congratulate senior sister Morong. Morong and I saw her look, and her heart thumped hard, subconsciously feeling that something was not right. Huang Yueli's look seemed a little too peaceful. She totally didn't look like someone whose plot had failed. She then turned her gaze towards Li Moying. Li Moying's expression was totally unreadable to her. He totally didn't take notice of anyone else. That pair of seductive peach blossom eyes were fixated tightly onto Huang Yueli, as his expression was gentle, and he would caress the young lady's hair every now and then. You can also listen on. How did it become like this? Could it be that there really was some plot? Morong and I shook her head as she tried hard not to let her mind wander. No, it shouldn't be like that. She coincidentally read on this historical array, and she would definitely be able to decode it successfully. Lung Yifeng urged, since you know the way, then hurry and start decoding it. We can save more time and enter the cave dwelling earlier. Morong and I had no time to let her thoughts wander as she only nodded, moving upwards in a hurry. Decoding an array was a complicated piece of work, and rough judgment to decode was one thing. But when they really started to work on it, it was another thing. Even though she had read the relative records on the ancient manuals and knew the decoding train of thought, but it still required a huge amount of calculation and deduction. Morong and I held on to the array board as she went round the cave dwelling's outer walls numerous times as her forehead creased tightly, uttering to herself. After spending close to 2 hours, she finally drew out a piece of brick from the surrounding walls, shifting it to some other location. Following Morong Ni's action, the entire cave dwelling flashed another bright light, so bright that it pierced everyone's gazes. Feng Xiaoning was feeling joyful. How? Is the array considered to be decoded? Morong and I shook her head. Not yet, it's still too early. This is just 1/10. Feng Xiaoning's face turned black as he didn't imagine that decoding an array was such a troublesome matter and wasted so much time. Lung Yifeng had once seen array masters decoding arrays and knew what Morong and I said wasn't wrong as he hurriedly stopped Feng Xiaoning. All right, you quieten down a little and stop bothering Miss Morong from decoding the array. Just like that. Morong and I spent a long time deducing continuously as her face started to turn paler and paler. Because the more she deduced, she realized that the complexity of this array had far surpassed her calculations, and every single time she decoded a step, the next step was an even harsher and undecodable situation which she had to face, and very soon it started to exhaust her concentration. In the end, she finally could not hold on as her head suddenly felt dizzy and was about to fall. How is it? Have you finally decoded it all? How much time more? Feng Xiaoning had completely lost his patience. Lung Yifeng also felt that Morong Ni's condition wasn't quite right as he started to look impatient as well. Miss Morong, what's the current situation now? You're the one who said it yourself that this array was simple and you would definitely be able to decode it. Are you intentionally dragging the time to fool with us? Anyone could tell the threat in his tone, and Morong and I naturally knew it even more clearly. She quivered as she felt a chill, suddenly regaining some consciousness. That was it. If she really couldn't decode the array, then would she really become the object of despise to the two sects? She had already betrayed Celestial Light Sect, so if Green Cloud Sect were to not want her, then she would really be finished. Morong and I was feeling extremely anxious and had no way to quieten down her heart to think carefully. She had already made so many mistakes in her own deduction, and yet she had not detected it at all. Finally, she forcibly came out with a conclusion. Murong and I didn't have the time to carefully think if the answer was right or wrong as she stretched out her hand on the wall, lifting up the last brick. A loud boom reverberated. Instantly, the entire cave dwelling's exterior was enveloped by circles of blue light, and in this blue ray of light, the cave dwelling's entrance opened up on the two sides. But the main entrance had not opened up completely, only separating slightly, as it revealed an entry which only allowed one person to pass through at a time. You can also listen on. When Murong and I saw this, she was so excited beyond herself. She simply couldn't believe that she really did it. She actually decoded this historical array. She had not expected that her last action, without taking time to think through carefully, actually let her hit the first prize, gaining success in one shot. Lung Yifeng and Fong Xiaoning exchanged glances as they revealed an overjoyed expression. You're truly a rare array skill talent, which can only be found once in every few centuries. Even such an advanced historical array can't stop you. You're just too incredible. It's Green Cloud Sec's honor to have been able to invite second Miss Murong to join our team. Green Cloud Sec's disciples were all feeling pleasantly surprised. On the other hand, Celestial Light Sec's side was filled with sorrow as each one of them felt extremely frustrated. Murong and I saw their expressions and felt even more complacent. HMPF, how dare they belittle this young miss? How is it now? Feeling regret? But it's all too late. She was just about to say something to taunt them, so as to gain back her face, but Fong Xiaoning gave her a gentle push on her back. You can say whatever you want later. We have to grab hold of time and enter quickly. Murong and I raised her head as her eyes met Fong Xiaoning's gaze, immediately understanding what he meant. That's right. Now was the most crucial time of all, and every second counted. The entrance of the cave dwelling was only that big, and that meant that the first batch of people who went in couldn't be that many. Whoever went in first would have a longer duration to seek the treasures. Don't think that the two sects had agreed earlier on distributing the treasures equally, but the minute they really enter the cave dwelling, who would be so silly as to hand out the things which they have taken and wait for equal distribution? How could that be possible? Of course it belonged to whoever had grabbed it first. Because of that, the most important thing now was to hurry in and grab the treasure. Murong and I regained her senses as she couldn't care less about taunting Huang Yueli as she turned around and dashed towards the entrance of the cave, swelling at the first chance. Green Cloud Sec's people were originally nearer to the entrance of the cave dwelling, and now, under Lung Yifeng's commands, all of them ran into the cave dwelling, striving to be the first and fearing to be the last. Celestial Light Sec's disciples had not expected them to be so sinister, and originally they had yet to react. So by the time they realized that Green Cloud Sec's people had played dirty and wanted to rush over, but it was all too late. A large half of Green Cloud Sec's disciples had already entered in, and the rest of them, under Lung Fengyi's incitation, had blocked the cave dwelling's entrance. The entrance was only this wide, and it was tough for two people to squeeze in simultaneously. Celestial Light Sec's people were blocked on the outside, so it was impossible to cut the queue to enter. Luo Jiyun's face turned totally black as he cried out, flustered and exasperated. Fong Xiaoning, your Green Cloud sect is really shameless. You actually disregarded the agreement and snatched a chance to run in. Fong Xiaoning laughed heartily. Since when have we gone back on the agreement? Mr. Luo, please touch your conscience when you speak. Our original agreement didn't mention who went in first or last. So your Celestial Light sect can also enter first if you wanted to, isn't it? Isn't it all because your actions are too slow? Luo Jiyun almost fainted from hearing that. Too despicable, too shameless. Green Cloud sect is also a large sect, so how could there be such despicable disciples like you guys? What despicable? This is called relying on your own skill. Talking to me about virtues in front of treasures? You look like you're not very young, but how could you be so naive? Fong Xiaoning gave a cold laugh several times, and on seeing that most of his comrades had already entered in, as he hurriedly joined in as well. You can also listen on. Luo Jiun was really infuriated as he shot upwards and wanted to chase after Fong, shouting tightly towards the cave dwelling to stop them. But he had just started moving when a figure dashed out from the side, blocking right in front of him. Junior brother Luo, what's the hurry? Keep calm and don't get too excited. Luo Jian lifted up his head to realize that it was Huang Yueli, as he could only stop in his tracks. But the anxiousness in his heart had not reduced. Little sister-in-law, it's already come to this, so please stop blocking me. Haven't you seen it for yourself? Those shameless fellows from Green Cloud sect actually didn't keep to their promise and intentionally entered before us. What shall we do if they snatch the treasures first? Actually, all of the other disciples were burning with anxiety, and upon hearing that, they immediately started to echo the same thing. That's right, junior sister Bai. We have to hurry and enter as well. Although there's a lot of treasures in the cave dwelling, but they would definitely take whatever they see. So if we're slow, there'd be nothing left. That's right, Green Cloud sect's bunch of wretched people are simply too sinister. Junior sister, Bai, you shouldn't have agreed to split the treasures with them equally earlier. They are totally up to no good. All of them were extremely worried, and if it hadn't been for Huang Yueli to stop them on their way, they were itching to rush in. The minute they thought of the rare treasure in the cave dwelling falling into the hands of Green Cloud sect, they made everyone filled with irreconciliation. However, Huang Yueli was totally not influenced by them, as her delicate little face did not show a single bit of urgency. Instead, her lips curled up as she laughed softly. Senior brothers and senior sisters, I've already said this earlier, keep calm and don't get too excited. Relax. The real rare treasure isn't something which the fastest person can get. Moreover speaking, how do you know that Green Cloud sex people had really entered the correct cave dwelling and not a trap? Everyone was stunned. Trap? What do you mean? Just as everyone was bearing a blank look, a loud, shocking explosion was suddenly heard from the cave dwelling's direction. Boom! The ground vibrated vigorously, and black smoke started to surge out from the cave dwelling's top. Miserable screams were heard, and following the bubbling airflow, Green Cloud sex disciples who had rushed over to the cave dwelling were all thrown out. The explosion was just too intense, and although Huang Yueli was a distance away from the cave dwelling, she could feel the aftermath of the explosion charging toward her from her back. She wasn't able to evade in time, as her small face turned slightly pale. Damn it! She had not expected that they were still too near. If she had known earlier, she would not be nosy and came out personally to stop them. Just as Huang Yueli thought that she would really be injured, a black image flashed by. A strong arm hooked on her waist, and pulling at her, he drew her to one side as he successfully saved her right before the airflow struck her. Huang Yueli rested into Li Moying's arms as she was still in a panicked state. Moying, luckily you're here. The large palm which grabbed her slender waist suddenly tightened as he heard the young lady's pain cries, and he berated her in a bad mood. So stupid. Why were you standing in such a dangerous place for? Did you really think that you were still in the 9th stage realm? Huang Yueli buried her face onto his chest, rubbing him as she acted as though nothing happened. Boo-hoo, you're so fierce. I'm so scared, yet you're still scolding me. You can also listen on. The corners of Li Moying's lips kept twitching as it was obvious that this lass was faking it, but he was still stirred up by her soft cries of pain as he felt his heart ache. What's the matter? Let me take a look. Are you injured? Saying that, he didn't wait for Huang Yueli to reply as his palm started to pat her from top to bottom as he checked her body to see if she had sustained any injuries. Huang Yueli's face flushed red immediately. This man really didn't bother about the current situation. They were in public, and he actually did this? She hurriedly pushed him away. Nothing. I'm fine. Just merely had a shock. All right, let go of me. So many people are looking at us. Li Moying suffered some domestic violence punches from her and forcibly stopped. But he wasn't very assured as he frowned and stared at Huang Yueli. Really all right? If you're injured, you must tell me. You're not allowed to hide it from me. Huang Yueli nodded her head earnestly to guarantee. I'm really fine. Rest assured. Moying then heaved a sigh of relief as the huge arm on her waist didn't shift away. It merely relaxed a little, but he still locked her in his arms. Huang Yueli struggled for a while and stopped, only pouting her lips, allowing him to do as he wished. Moying turned around and looked towards the direction of the cave dwelling. Right now, the exploding sound had stopped, and the black smoke above the cave had dissipated by a large amount. Earlier, there was such an intense tremor which could be described as earth shaking and mountains swaying. The several thousand-year-old trees nearby had all fallen onto the ground, but this luxurious, beautiful cave dwelling remained standing and motionless, without even a crack on the walls. It seemed as though nothing had happened earlier. But the surrounding walls of the cave dwelling were green cloud sect's disciples who had fallen everywhere. All of them, without any exception, had all been expelled from the cave dwelling. Moreover, because of that earlier explosion, all of them had sustained heavy injuries as they laid limp on the ground, unable to climb up at all. Celestial Light sect's disciples crowded around them as they discussed with shock. What happened? Hadn't they entered the cave dwelling successfully earlier? Why did they get expelled out? Ha, do you even need to think? It must be because the array had not been decoded and that entrance was just a trap, so they all fell for it. That's right. Who asked them to be so complacent earlier? How about now? It's so hilarious. Celestial Light sect's disciples were all rocking with laughter as they all heaved a sigh of relief. But at the same time, they were also terrified at the bottom of their hearts. Luckily, we didn't enter. Otherwise, we will end up the same as them. Right. Earlier, I almost chased after them to run it. Luckily, Junior's sister stopped us. Wait, does that mean that she had already seen through something? Makes sense. Otherwise, why would she purposely stop us? But isn't that too ridiculous? Muring and I can't even decode the historical array, so how could she possibly find out the secret behind this? Probably just coincidence. The crowd looked at each other in dismay, as they felt that there was more to it that meets the eye. Huang Yueli had once again saved everyone in Celestial Light Sect, and this was something which all of them acknowledged. But how did she save them? This was what made all of them unable to comprehend. Surely it couldn't be that her level of mastery in array skills was stronger than Murong and I, right? This simply could not be justified, because Murong and I was a publicly acknowledged #1 array skills talent in South Sky region. Since young, there had been many famous array masters who appreciated her innate talent and were snatching to take her in as their disciple. You can also listen on. How could Huang Yueli possibly be more talented than Murong and I? Her armament refining skills and cultivation innate talent was already so strong, and if she really had that high level of mastery in array skills, how would anyone else be able to live? Just at this moment, those disciples from Green Cloud sect who had fainted all started to regain their consciousness. Lung Yifeng's cultivation was the highest, and he was the first to regain consciousness. The minute he opened his eyes, he discovered that he was lying on the ground and was not able to go into shock when he felt a wave of intense pain emitting into his brain cells. His internal organs seemed to have shifted places, which made him go into so much pain that he could only moan out loudly. What is going on? Shouldn't he already be in the cave, dwelling, selecting the treasures? He still remembered that the moment right before he lost consciousness, he had discovered a large quantity of 8th tier and above profound armaments as he was so excited and was indecisive on which one to select. But in the end, his memories immediately returned to him as Lung Yifeng recalled that sudden explosion as his expression turned extremely gloomy. Fang Xiaoning had also regained consciousness, and he turned his head back blankly. Upon meeting Lung Fengyi's gaze, he immediately understood what happened. Damn, looks like the array had not been decoded. We have all been tricked by that wretched slut Murong and I. It was exactly because he was the last few to enter, hence his injury was not as serious, and he could still forcibly stand up. Fang Xiaoning walked to Murong and I, who was still unconscious, as he grabbed her collar and shook her vigorously. Murong and I, still pretending to be dead. Get up right now. Wake up. Murong and I awoke in dizziness, as there was a complete blank on her face. followed by a sharp cry of pain. "Arg, it's so painful, ugh. Why can't I move? What happened?" Fong Xiaoning was extremely upset as he gave her a tight slap. Immediately, Murong Ni's face became swollen as the corners of her lips flowed out blood, totally dazed from a slap. Fong Xiaoning berated her in exasperation. "What happened? You still have the cheek to ask. Didn't you say that you're sure that you could decode the array? Wasn't it you who said you've succeeded? Why is it that so many of us have entered the cave dwelling, but we were all expelled out and all of us sustained such heavy injuries? What? How could that be possible?" Murong and I was stunned as she slowly recalled the situation at that time, while her complexion started to turn paler and paler. At the end, she had completely lost all colors of blood. Recalling the entire process of development, how could Murong and I still not understand? She was just feeling that her luck was simply too good, as she simply just drew any piece of brick which decoded the array. But as she was too excited, she had not thought of the possibility of a trap appearing. Right now, recalling that she had not decoded the array successfully, but instead, she was misled. Not only had she not brought green cloud sex people into the cave dwelling, she had caused them to suffer a huge loss. Fong Xiaoning laughed coldly. "Aren't you the one who made yourself out to be so incredible? Aren't you nicknames South Sky Region's #1 array skill talent? This is your potential. It's simply a joke. No wonder Li Moying wasn't willing to bring you along, because you're basically just a scammer. Whoever brought you along will get into bad luck." Murong and I heard that and immediately forgot the pain on her body as she anxiously tried to explain for herself. "Fong, Mr. Fong, this is merely an accident." "Accident? One word accident, and you caused so many of my green cloud sex people to suffer such a terrible state. You still have a cheek to say so? You sure you're not a spy sent over by Celestial Light Sect?" I'm not. How could I possibly be a spy?" Murong and I shook her head vehemently in denial. You can also listen on. However, Fong Xiaoning had no mood to continue listening to her. All he knew was trusting Murong and I was the gravest mistake that he had made. Just because of Murong Ni's boasting, it caused so many green cloud sex disciples to sustain such heavy injury and losses. One must know that green cloud sex top-rated battle power had all entered the cloudy Chilan Mystic region this time round, and after the explosion in the Mystic region, many of them had sustained a very serious injury, which needed at least 10 days to half a month in order for them to recuperate. But this was the cloudy Chilan Mystic region. Danger lurked all around the ancient Mystic region, and they had to face various dangers every day. So where would they find the luxury of the time to rest and recuperate? Even if they were able to find a safe spot to make slight adjustments, but they were only in the cloudy Chilan Mystic region for a month. Now that there's only 10 over days left, surely it could not be that they were going to spend the last 10 over days to recuperate. This was a total waste of their opportunity in entering the ancient Mystic region for experience training. Needless to say, there were many Celestial Light Sect's disciples who were keeping a watchful eye on them, just waiting for them to run into bad luck. This time round, Green Cloud Sect's top experts were all injured, whereas Celestial Light Sect's people were all perfectly fine. Thinking of this, Fong Xiaoning suddenly jolted as he turned around. He saw Huang Yue and Li Moying standing side by side, not too far away, and Li Moying's hand was placed on his fiancée's waist as the both of them had an unruffled expression, occasionally casting glances at them as though they were watching a huge joke. Fong Xiaoning was so infuriated that he almost fainted. Lung Yifeng was also extremely upset because he was the one who led Green Cloud Sect's disciples in. Now that so many of Green Cloud Sect's disciples were seriously injured, he had to bear the responsibility for it. Lung Yifeng's gaze fell upon Murong and I as anger arose from all directions. "Murong and I, you're indeed the spy sent over from Celestial Light Sect. You've caused us so much harm to Green Cloud Sect, so I will absolutely not let you off. All the disciples from Green Cloud Sect will not let you off." Murong and I suddenly had a change of colors. I I really didn't do it intentionally. I really didn't, but no one believed her. Or perhaps it could be said that it wasn't important if she was a spy or not. Green Cloud sect had suffered such a huge loss, so all the disciples were bearing fire inside, as they needed to vent out on someone. Murong and I originally wasn't part of their sect, and now that she was the main culprit in creating this mess, she naturally became the object of everyone's fury. Sensing the vengeful gazes radiating from all around her, Murong Ni's body turned icy cold. Right now, she finally felt extremely remorseful. Why did she go rely on Green Cloud sect? Green Cloud sect's people were obviously using her, and the minute she was of no more use, they immediately turned their backs on her. Murong and I had no other way but to look towards Limoying as she begged mercifully. Eldest senior brother, I beg you, please save me. I know I'm in the wrong, and I promise I will never betray the sect in future. Please, on account of my father, please save me. Otherwise, Green Cloud sect's people will definitely torture me to death. Eldest senior brother. Limoying's eyes flashed a cold glint. He had not spoken out when the ordinary disciples from Celestial Light sect already started to cry out in fury. Young sect master, please don't be soft-hearted and forgive her. That's right, Murong and I is simply too shameless. Earlier, she claimed loudly that she will stand on Green Cloud sect's side, and now that she can't continue staying there, she wants to return to Celestial Light sect? You can also listen on. That's right. It's impossible for such a good thing to happen under the heavens. Did she think that we're all fools or what? Young sect master, you're so brilliant and wide. Surely you will not fall for this let's trick right. Murong and I betrayed her own sect and almost helped Green Cloud sect to snatch away the treasure in the cave dwelling. These acts had already made Celestial Light sect's disciples hated her to the core. Even if she was sect master Murong's biological daughter, no one was willing to forgive her. Murong and I was stuck in between a rock and a hard place as she was so anxious that her tears kept flowing, entreating piteously. Eldest senior brother, I really realized my mistake. Please give me another chance. Byruoli, I've already been tricked by you to such a miserable state. Are you still unwilling to let me off? Huang Yuli looked extremely innocent as she replied. I trick you? Since when had I tricked you? It was obviously your team members who pushed you out to decode the array, and I'd also given you a chance on Accord that we were from the same sect, especially giving up the chance to you. But your mastery in array skills is just too bad. So who can you bomb? But, Murong and I was unable to give a convincing explanation to defend herself, but she subconsciously sensed that today's matter definitely had something to do with Huang Yueli. But she didn't know how Huang Yueli managed to scheme her. Could it be that she really saw through this historical array? Moreover, she intentionally dug a pit for her to jump in along the way. Wasn't the difficulty just too high? The last time when they were in the Dark Moon Forest, Huang Yueli was merely a first-stage realm practitioner, and due to cultivation restrictions, she could only come out with the standard of a second or third rank array master. So Murong and I always had the wrong impression that Huang Yueli's array skills were on par with hers, and even if she was slightly better at it, there was a limit to it. Hence she thought that if she herself was not able to see through the array, Huang Yueli would naturally not be able to do so as well. Huang Yueli didn't explain further as her lips curled, showing a friendly attitude. All right, Mr. Lung, I'm sure both of you still remember our previous agreement, right? If Murong and I was able to decode the array and prove her value, then we will split the treasures with you equally. Now that she had failed in the challenge, so there's no point in the cooperation between us right now. We won't cooperate with weaklings, so please hurry up and leave right now. She was so quick to issue the marching off orders which made Green Cloud sect's disciples both embarrassed and discomfited. The party which was chased off like dogs due to inability was actually something which was happening every day in Soaring Heavens continent. But as West Sky region's #1 sect disciples, this was the first time many of them had suffered such humiliation. Usually, they were the ones who chased other people away. Lung Yifeng's expression was especially discomfited. To be seen in such a silly sight in front of the lady he liked, and his love rival really was much worse than killing him. He was really not resigned to it, as he had not nudged at all. Lemoyne spoke out icily. Why? Still trying to renege on here? Do you really want me to chase you all off, personally? Not that it's impossible, but I'm afraid that you won't be able to take it. Everyone shivered all over. Lung Yifeng asked with much difficulty. Young sect masterly, don't be like that. If a talented array master like Murong and I isn't able to decode the array, then the only way to enter would definitely be by brute force to decode the array. At this kind of timing, one more person means one more battle power, so you will still need us. Isn't it too early for you to say to not cooperate right now? Lemoyne casted a glance at him as he replied coldly. Who told you that? I'm using brute force to decode the array. You can also listen on. Lung Yifeng had totally not expected him to give this reply, as he immediately went into a daze. These words, what do you mean? Everyone present stared at him in astonishment. Lemoyne lowered his head as he looked at his fiancée in his arms as he asked softly, Can you decode the array now, or do you want to take a break first? His gaze and tone was extremely gentle, as though he had changed from an icy, emotionless top expert into a gentle and caring lover in a split second. Even Huang Yuli was dazed by his bewitching peach blossom eyes, feeling that she was going to be bewitched by this man. She shook her head. No need. Earlier, we've already watched such a long show, so if I still don't move, my body will start to rot. Saying that, she pushed Lemoyne aside gently as she walked towards the cave dwelling's entrance directly. Green Cloud Sect's disciples all started to tremble when they heard what she said, so they had excitedly ran into the array, assuming that they had gained a huge advantage, but in Huang Yueli's eyes, it was a monkey show. HMPF, this Byraoli is just too arrogant. She thinks that she has Lemoyne behind her, and no one dares to ruffle her feathers? Wait a minute. Why did she walk towards the cave dwelling's entrance? Could she be trying to decode the array? What joke is that? She wants to decode the array. You must have seen wrongly. Byraoli isn't even an array master. But she really walked over. Under everyone's astonished gaze, Huang Yueli walked to the cave dwelling entrance. She raised her head and looked around, almost without any hesitation, as she stretched out her hand and drew out a piece of brick from the wall. What is she doing? The crowd looked at each other in dismay, with a dazed look on their faces. From her stance, it bore some similarities to what Murong and I was doing earlier, like she was decoding the array. But if this was true, shouldn't she be observing carefully around the surrounding walls first? How is it possible for her to just take out one piece of brick immediately? Earlier, even the array skill talent Murong and I observed for 2 hours before she made a move. Luo Jiyun saw Fong Xiaoning's shocked look as he couldn't help but laughed coldly. Such ignorance. Little sister-in-law is just decoding the array. Decode the array? How is this possible? This is a historical array which had been around for several thousand years, and she just made a move without taking a careful look. Heaven knows what the consequence will be. Perhaps it might be even more terrifying than the explosion earlier. Fong Xiaoning totally didn't believe his words. Luo Jiyun gave a cold laugh. Such lack of knowledge. In front of a true blue array skill talent. What is a historical array? Array skill talent? You're referring to Byraoli? Isn't she an armament master? How did she turn into an array master? Luo Jiyun replied disapprovingly. Very strange, eh? Little sister-in-law is exactly this kind of genius. But no, this is impossible. You're confusing me. Fong Xiaoning still refused to believe because this was simply out of his imagination. Luo Jiyun didn't bother to explain further. His sister-in-law's innate talent was indeed heaven-defying. It's very normal for others not to believe based on empty words, but seeing was believing, so the truth would prove everything. After Huang Yueli drew out the first brick, her feet immediately started to sh*t as she revolved several meters around the walls of the cave dwelling and suddenly stretched out her finger. Before anyone could react in time, she had already drawn out the second brick. You can also listen on. Following that, she continued to move as she walked around the wall, and she continuously started to strike, sometimes pulling out a brick, and sometimes using profound energy to draw out a marking. While she was doing these, her feet kept on shifting without pausing, and she had completed everything at one go. Right until she went one entire round did she finally stop. Everyone was in a daze while looking at her movements, not knowing what she was up to. Actually, Lung, Feng, and the rest had a faint premonition, but in the deepest depths of their hearts, they totally didn't dare to believe that there was such a thing, so they had been telling themselves. This was impossible. Huang Yueli clapped her hands and said, "All right, I'm finally done." Her words had just landed when a layer of dim light appeared on top of the cave dwelling, which was different from the earlier, eye-piercing bright ray. This layer of light was extremely soft, but radiated with an extremely strong penetrating power as it lit up a large area in the surroundings. The image of the cave dwelling the light became much clearer. At the same time, the cave dwelling's entrance had opened up completely as it revealed a neat and tidy pathway, extending all the way inside. This scenario looked totally different from earlier when Murong and I decoded the array. With such comparison, anyone could tell that this was the correct sign of the array being decoded. Luo Jiyun rubbed his eyes as he cried out in astonishment. So, there was a layer of mist around the cave dwelling. No wonder it looked dusty earlier. I thought it was because the cave dwelling had been here for too long, hence it was layered with dust and cobwebs. Huang Yueli laughed as she said, "These kinds of buildings are specially constructed with a special kind of material and with the support of arrays. As long as the effect of the array does not disappear, the exterior would not change due to the passing of time. Look, doesn't this cave dwelling look somewhat different from earlier?" Luo Jiyun was enlightened as he nodded his head furiously. After the mist dissipated, the exterior walls of the cave dwelling seemed to have been refurbished, as though it had been painted with a new coat of paint, as every piece of brick reflected the sun, looking extremely dazzling. The entire cave dwelling looked even more luxurious, and it was easy to tell that several thousands of years ago, just how magnificent this cave dwelling was and how powerful and highly positioned of a top expert was the owner of the cave dwelling. Luo Jiyun rubbed his palms as he cried out excitedly, "That's great. Let's hurry in quickly. This Sage Wu Ding doesn't seem like a simple person, so there's definitely great stuff inside." He turned his head back and was about to call out for the Celestial Light sect's disciples whom he was on better terms with to go in together, but in the end he saw everyone's dazed expressions on their faces. "What's the situation?" He went into a blank and immediately realized what happened as he couldn't stop laughing. "Why are you all in a daze for? Can't you tell that the array outside the cave dwelling had already been decoded? Why are you still wasting time here for?" "But this, I feel that I must be dreaming. This array is really decoded? This is just Junior Sister by really is an array master? How could that be possible? How could there be such a ridiculous genius under the heavens? Forget it that her cultivation innate talent is that abnormal. She's also an armament refining genius. Okay, we can deal with that. But why is it that she can also decode a historical array? Even such a talent like Junior Sister Morong had failed earlier. This person had spoken everyone's thoughts, and instantly, it caused a lot of people to echo together with him. You can also listen on. Everyone's astonished gazes shot towards Huang Yueli, feeling that they must be dreaming as this was totally unrealistic. This kind of matter was simply unheard of. Did this kind of genius really exist? Or could it be that they were only dreaming? Huang Yueli's lips curled upwards as she said, "Just a small trick. Although this is a historical array, but it is just a very commonly seen invisible array. Only thing was the one who set the array had great ideas and added in many variations in the small details, hence it was slightly more confusing. In actual fact, it's not difficult to decode an array." Huang Yueli had casually explained with a few words, but did not mention that no matter how simple this array was, it was still an 8th-tier array. However, She didn't bother if anyone believed her or not, as she immediately urged, "All right, stop wasting time. Let's all enter right now." Celestial Light's sex disciples had all woken up from the initial dream as they started jumping up jubilantly, rushing towards the cave dwelling's entrance. Murong and I was completely devastated when she saw this, as her eyes rolled back and fainted right there. As the saying went, comparing people made one dead, while comparing goods would result in it being dumped. Originally, although she had failed in decoding the array, she could still blame it on the fact that it was due to the array being too advanced. But now that Huang Yueli had really decoded the array successfully, that was a real slap on her face. And it even sounded real loud. Murong and I was nicknamed as South Sky Region's #1 array skill talent. Hadn't she boasted that she would be able to decode the array? In the end, she had duped all her team members. On the contrary, another person had easily decoded the array, and this person wasn't even an array master, but an armament master. Damn, what's the situation right now? Bairuoli said that this is a simple array, so why can't you decode it? Fong Xiaoning howled, utterly discomfited, but looking back, he realized that Murong and I had already fainted. He furiously kicked Murong and I, flying as she crashed into a tree, and her head happened to knock against a tree branch as blood started to flow. Fong Xiaoning was still not appeased as he said to Lung Yifeng, "What should we do now? It's all my fault for believing that trash Murong Ni's words. Now Celestial Light Sect's own people have decoded the array, so we gain nothing to split now." Lung Yifeng clenched his teeth tightly. Isn't it too early to say that they have decoded the array? Earlier we also thought that we had succeeded, but in the end, we were expelled out? Perhaps their success is merely a false image. These words were obviously a blatant lie to their own selves, but what Green Cloud Sex people needed was exactly this kind of mental comfort. Someone else immediately echoed, "Right, it's definitely this way. That Bairuoli isn't even an array master, so how could she possibly just decode the array like that?" "That's right. Have you seen her running around in that manner earlier? This isn't decoding the array. It's more like dancing, isn't it? Casually jumping around a few times and drawing some imprints, and she could decode the array. Could it be any simpler? Is she bullying us that we haven't met an array master before?" Normal array masters would take out their array board when decoding arrays, carefully deducing, considering all the changes in the array before they made a move. Her moves earlier means that she had decoded the array? That would be like seeing a living ghost. I think the Celestial Light Sect is going to be in big trouble this time around, and their outcome will definitely be much worse off than us. You can also listen on. They intentionally said it loudly for Celestial Light Sect's people to hear. As expected, some disciples started to waver as they stopped in their tracks, not daring to move forward. Fong Xiaoning saw this, and suddenly a scheme came to his mind as he leaned in close to Lung Yifeng, speaking softly, "Eldest senior brother, let's be patient and wait a while. After those from Celestial Light Sect have all entered, they would not leave anyone to guard the entrance. Even if there was someone, as long as it wasn't Li Moying himself, they won't be able to stop you. By then we can sneak in behind them. Although we're not able to split most of the loot, but at least it's much better than getting nothing at all." Lung Yifeng hesitated. Isn't this too contemptible? As a direct descendant of the Lung family, he bore the pride of a large families, and this was equivalent to being a thief, so he really couldn't lower himself to do it. Fong Xiaoning replied, "At this kind of timing, what's there to talk about being contemptible or not? Entering the Mystic Region's priority is to gain benefits. Moreover speaking, most of the top experts from our sect are heavily injured, and if we don't take the opportunity to gain some advantages, what shall we do later on?" Lung Yifeng slowly nodded his head, although both of them were whispering. But as Huang Yueli and Li Moying's soul trace was exceptionally strong, they still heard what they said. Li Moying couldn't help but sneered coldly, totally ignoring them as he walked into the cave, dwelling directly. Huang Yuli pursed her lips as she saw that most of Celestial Light's sex people had already entered, and she stood by the entrance of the cave, dwelling, and drew out an array pattern in midair with her right hand. Following her actions, the cave dwelling's entrance started to close up slowly. Fang Xiaoning and Lung Yifeng were originally planning happily, waiting to sneak into the cave dwelling to pick on the leftovers. Whoever knew that before they had the time to be delighted, the cave dwelling's door started to close up. Oh no! How did this happen? Byroli is going to close up the entrance. Heavens, how is this possible? Wasn't it said that she had not decoded the array successfully? Why is it that she can open or close this array to her liking? What kind of level of mastery in array skills does she have? It's too scary. We're finished, the door is about to close, so that means we totally cannot enter. Lung Yifeng and Fang Xiaoning exchanged glances as he howled. Everyone quickly squeeze in right now. We're not going to make it if it's too late. Saying that, the both of them rushed over. Lung Yifeng was indeed the #1 man among the younger generation of Green Cloud sect. His speed was extremely swift like a bolt of lightning as he rushed into the cave, dwelling in an instant. Although Huang Yuli had displayed her array skills, but the opening and closing process of the array was rather slow, and this door had not completely closed up when Lung Yifeng directly charged in. Fang Xiaoning's speed wasn't any slower, as well as he followed closely behind, also charging in. After they entered the cave, dwelling successfully, the first thing they did was not to race against time to search for treasures, but they both struck out a move towards Huang Yuli at the same time. They were very clear-minded that as long as they were able to control Huang Yuli, this array would not be able to shut fully, so now that the entrance was half closed, and the entrance was rather narrow, but they were still able to squeeze in. Huang Yuli was fully concentrated on the array. Controlling a complicated 8th-tier array to the current 5th-stage realm 1st level was absolutely not an easy thing, so she required an extreme amount of concentration, so that she did not make any mistake. You can also listen on. Because of that, Lung Yifeng and Fang Xiaoning's attacks were something that she couldn't go up against, or even she totally could not respond to it. In a split second, surging profound energy had reached her chest and was about to deal her with a heavy strike. However, Lung Yifeng still bore tender and protective feelings for her, hence he wasn't too vicious in his attack. But Huang Yuli was in the middle of performing, and if she was interrupted, it would definitely result in an extremely serious backlash, and her meridians would definitely be damaged. On seeing that she was about to be hit, Huang Yuli's face did not show any signs of shock. Instead, she totally didn't attempt to evade it as she stood calmly at her spot, drawing out lines and lines of array patterns without any mistakes, her hands not even shaking at all. Byroli's reaction is really slow. Still controlling the array at this point of time, she's really looking for her own death. Fang Xiaoning laughed coldly to himself. But before he could finish laughing, a stroke of purple lightning flashed past the air. This bolt of lightning descended from the sky and was rough and bright, as though it was going to split the entire cave, dwelling into two. Following the lighting was a thunderous sound as the ground started to shake. The two of them had an abrupt change of expression as they anxiously retreated to evade, but the speed of the lightning was simply too fast, and before they had time to react, it was already too late. Fang Xiaoning gave a blood-curdling shriek and was struck directly by the lightning on his chest. He turned into a charred black color as his body was still smoking and he was expelled out of the cave dwelling. Lung Yifeng's reaction was much faster, but he was still struck by the lighting on his shoulder. His arm immediately lost all senses as he was sent flying out as well while spitting out blood in midair as he fell onto the ground. Only thing was he had not fainted, so he could still see who was the person who had attacked him. Lung Yifeng's eyes peeled wide to stare at the man who appeared suddenly beside Huang Yuli. Li Moying, hadn't he already entered the cave dwelling? Why did he return to protect Huang Yuli? Moreover, his attack speed was so fast and sudden, but Li Moying could still react in such a short amount of time, with tremendous force to cause such serious injury to the both of them with just one move. What kind of ability was that? Under Lung Fengyi's terrified gaze, Li Moying stood on the right side behind Huang Yueli, displaying a guard's posture, protecting her. Li Moying shot a glance towards Lung Fengyi as he gave a chilly laugh. Dare to make a move to attack my woman. Did you really think I was dead? Trying to make use of the confusion to enter the cave dwelling to split a cup of soup? You're daydreaming. Saying that his sleeve flicked and a burst of severe, profound energy was unleashed. Lung Yifeng lost the chance to react as he was swept away, just like leaves being blown away by the autumn wind, flying out of the boundary of the cave dwelling. At the same time, Huang Yueli had finally completed all the array patterns as the cave dwelling's entrance started to shut steadily under her control. From the start to the end, the movements on her hands had not stopped, and there hadn't been a moment of slowing down, as she was neither fast nor slow in her steady and accurate actions. As though the two people who popped out and dealt her with a murderous hand had totally not appeared. She was absolutely certain that her fiancé was right by her side and would be able to ensure her safety at any one time. So she was totally unguarded at all, because there was totally no need for that. You can also listen on. They had ample rapport, same as in their past lives. After Huang Yueli shut the entrance, Li Moying then stretched out his hand to hold hers, as their fingers locked tightly. Let's go, those irritating houseflies are already gone, so let's hurry in now. Huang Yueli gave a smile as she nodded, walking alongside with him into the cave dwelling. The rapport between the both of them didn't need them to say a single word, and they could mutually understand each other. When she required protection, this man was always this reliable, forever enabling her to feel at ease. The entrance was tightly shut, and towards those outside. This was a scene which made them lose all hope. Lung Yifeng was kicked away like a dead dog by Li Moying, and, after being thrown out of the door, he clutched his chest as he struggled to prop up himself. But all he saw was that pair of lovers who walked side by side, disappearing behind the door. Lung Yifeng was so infuriated that he spat out a mouthful of blood. This simply was bullying intolerably. Li Moying actually used such a way to humiliate him, whereas he had been humiliated several times, but did not have any chance to go against him. Ever since meeting Li Moying, he had been subjected to unimaginable torture. He could not match up to Li Moying no matter in what aspect. Each and every single time he tried to challenge him, it would always end up in a miserable ending. Furthermore, the ending was more miserable than the previous. On the other hand, Li Moying was forever calm as he stood at the top. Even till now, Lung Yifeng couldn't tell what was the upper limit of Li Moying's potential. He seemed to be a man with no limits. At any one time, he was able to display abilities which had surpassed one's imagination. Not only that, he was the perfect candidate who gathered both ableness and beauty in one. For example, Huang Yueli, a young lady with shocking innate talent in cultivation, armament refining, as well as array skills. She was probably the one and only super existence in the entire Sky Emperor City. All the heirs to the top powerhouses in Sky Emperor City were fighting over to marry her. But this young lady was only faithful towards Li Moying as her gaze was forever on Li Moying. Lung Yifeng felt that he was about to go crazy. Luckily this time, he had already thought of an idea for Li Moying to never leave the cloudy Qilin mystic region forever. Thinking of this, Lung Yifeng then forcibly controlled himself. Yes, Li Moying was going to be a dead man soon, so he need not be frustrated. He only needed to endure it this one time. Lung Yifeng clenched his fist tightly as he vowed to heavens. Li Moying, the day you leave the cave dwelling would be the day of your death and shattered reputation. Inside the cave dwelling, Li Moying and Huang Yueli walked to the main hall's courtyard. Entering to take a look, Huang Yueli revealed a slight, astonished expression, because Celestial Light Sect's disciples who had entered this place had all gathered in the courtyard, and none of them had grabbed the chance to go search for treasures. This made Huang Yuli rather surprised, as the rare treasure towards the ordinary disciples who entered the mystic region for their very first time had a huge attracting power, something which she was very clear of. She had thought that these people would separate on their own ways the minute they entered the door. When everyone saw them walking there, they started to crowd around them in both excitement and agitation. "Miss Bai, you're finally here. We've all been waiting for you." "Yes, you're too incredible. You even know array skills. Your array skills mastery is even higher than that of Murong and I. Just what kind of innate talent is that? Really too heaven-defying, simply unimaginable." You can also listen on. "If it hadn't been for you, we'd be finished this time round. Not only are we not able to enter the cave dwelling, we would also have been schemed by those shameless fellows from Green Cloud sect. Junior Sister Bai, I've already decided that from today onwards, you'd replace young sect master and become my most adored idol." Celestial Light sect's disciples were all crowding around Huang Yuli, expressing their heartfelt adoration and praises. Because it wasn't the first time that Huang Yuli had saved Celestial Light sect during a crucial moment. Last time, after they had ascertained the quota to the mystic region, it was the same scenario on the arena stage. Everyone thought that Celestial Light sect had failed completely, and no matter what, they weren't able to turn tables around. When Huang Yuli went on stage for the challenge, no one thought that she would emerge as the ultimate winner, so no one held any high hopes for her. However, the final result was that she had used her own ability to create one miracle after another, pulling strongly against a crazy tide to win the final victory for Celestial Light sect. This matter happened yet again, and this accumulated the prestige and status of Huang Yuli in Celestial Light sect's disciples' minds to a shockingly high degree. Li Moying saw the masked disciple's attitude, and his lips curled up slightly, feeling extremely delighted in his heart. Although Huang Yuli was his fiancée, but this kind of status would only made Celestial Light sect's disciples treat her with courtesy, but not worship or respect her. In Soaring Heaven's continent, only those who wielded truly powerful abilities were able to win the respect from others which came deep down in their hearts. So Huang Yuli obtaining the current status was all based on her own ability, conquering everyone. This made Li Moying felt extremely proud. His Leer was forever that powerful, that outstanding, and no matter where she went, she was the object of everyone's admiration, but unfortunately, she was his, totally devoted to loving him only. As a man, Li Moying felt that his vanity was satisfied to the max. But Li Moying quickly frowned. Those disciples who were crowded around Huang Yuli were extremely agitated, and they got closer and closer, squeezing her into the crowd, and someone even touched her hand. Li Moying's face immediately turned ugly as he stretched out his long arm and curled it around Huang Yuli's waist, bringing her into his embrace and successfully blocking out the passionate people who were around her. "All right, Lear already understands your intentions. Right now we're still in the cave dwelling, and there's a limit to the activation of the array, so everyone quickly grab hold of time to seek for treasures. If you continue dilly-dallying and miss the timing, then don't blame us for not reminding you. I repeat once again, you're not allowed to break out into a fight over the distribution of the treasures, since we're all from the same sect. We must talk things over to settle this, and if there are any private fights between you guys, and it falls onto my ears, I will absolutely not let it go. If you understand, then you are dismissed." Li Moying's expression was cold as he made it clear to everyone, and with a wave of his hand, he wanted to dismiss these unimportant people. It really was enough. Lear was his. He allowed others to express their adoration and respect toward his fiancée, but these people kept on revolving around her, so he simply couldn't take it. He and his fiancée wanted their own romantic couple's world, all right? This bunch of unreliable fellow really don't know how to watch the signs. Li Moying's black face was indeed intimidating. Celestial Light sect's disciples totally didn't dare to object after hearing him say that. You can also listen on. On seeing everyone being dismissed, Huang Yuli went into a blank as she turned towards Li Moying. Moing, you just let them go off like that? Li Moing's mood was originally not very good, and upon hearing Huang Yueli said that, he got even unhappier. Otherwise, what should I do? Don't tell me you want to hang around with so many attendants around? Huang Yueli finally heard that his tone was filled with unpleasantness as she raised her head to take a look at him and laughed out. Of course, I don't mean that. All right, they're all from your same sect, so why do you have to be jealous? They had merely surrounded her for a slightly longer time. Seriously, he had to even be jealous over this. Saying that, Huang Yueli raised her voice. Senior brothers and senior sisters, everyone please wait a while. The crowd stopped in their footsteps in surprise as they turned around to look at her. Junior sister Bai, what other instructions do you have for us? Huang Yueli smiled and said, earlier when I entered the door, I saw the decoration and structure of this cave dwelling. The first room in the east chamber should be a pill refining room. Second room is a storage room, and there should be quite a number of medicinal pills. Based on Sage Wu Ding's cultivation, the pills should at least be 7th level and above. The first room in the west chamber should be for armament refining, and there should be a storage room on the side as well. Other than that, in the south courtyard, there should be 3 other depots, so you guys can spend some time exploring these places. She thought for a moment and said, right, in order to prevent fighting, everyone ought to distribute the duties and split up into several groups. Each group will search a room, and all the treasures will belong to that group. First distribute it, and there's no room for regrets later on. She had said that to prevent Celestial Light's sect's disciples from arguing and fighting over the treasures, causing internal strife. Although Li Moing had already passed down his instructions, he was after all a man, and his thoughts weren't meticulous enough. Moreover, he was too lazy to arrange so carefully. After all, based on his ability and prestige. With a few words of warning, and no one would dare to create any trouble. Huang Yueli knew that just saying these weren't enough. Even if they couldn't fight on the surface, it was still very easy to cause conflict. Hence, she took the extra step to do the arrangement for the disciples. Hearing her words, originally those disciples who were like headless flies all found their direction as they started to discuss seriously. Seeing this, Huang Yueli's face popped out a smile as she automatically held Li Moing's hand, leaving the front courtyard together. Li Moing was tugged by her moving forward, but he was still scowling. You're rather concerned about those insignificant people, even giving them the idea on how to distribute the treasures. Huang Yueli knew he was jealous, but she blinked as she intentionally put on an innocent look. I'm just doing that out of consideration for you, the young sect master. That's why I helped them with the distribution method. Don't tell me that you're afraid that the treasures will be snatched away by them and you won't be getting anything. Li Moing gave a cold harumph as he stretched out his arm and brought her into his arms, lowering his head as he whispered into her ear. What does it matter if the treasures are all snatched away? What I hate is your attention being snatched away by them. Huang Yueli laughed out as she raised up her arms and hooked them around his neck. Then, tipping her toes, she leaned in close to the man, and her pink lips was just less than an inch away from him as she whispered, how could that be? In my heart. Of course, my future husband is the most important. If they weren't disciples from your sect, I can't even be bothered. You can also listen on. The young lady in her arms put on an evident smile, which was out to please him as her lips curled up slightly, and her fair little face seemed especially alluring and tempting. Li Moing's gaze darkened as he ferociously tightened his arm, bringing her petite stature in a circle as she fell into his arms. Then, lowering his head, he plundered the tender pink in front of his eyes. Their breeds were linked and were harmoniously blended together, as they knew that the occasion wasn't right. So Li Moing didn't kiss her too deeply, only exchanging a gentle and lingering light kiss. Not long after, he released the young lady in his arms, his expression apparently relaxed by quite a bit. Huang Yueli's face flushed with a shade of red as she subconsciously gazed to her left and right, putting on a guilty look. What place was this, and this man just kissed her upon disagreement? If the others were to see them, how embarrassing would that be? Luckily, everyone was too impatient to go search for the treasures, so no one would be so free to specially notice the duo who were hiding in the corner. There wasn't even a passerby in sight around the surroundings. Li Moying saw her bashful look as his mood really lifted up as he said, "All right, where shall we do now? Isn't Grandmaster Huang going to bring me to seek treasure?" Huang Yueli intentionally replied, "I've already distributed all the treasures out, so there's none for you left." Li Moying's brows rose as he smiled. "Still trying to bluff me? It's not my first time on an experience learning trip with you. Since when would a little money grubber like you be so kind-hearted? The best things are definitely left for yourself. Isn't that so?" Huang Yuli gave a humph. "Those are meant for me, not for you." Li Moying totally didn't mind what she said as he continued smiling. "Isn't yours mine as well? In our home, the wife calls the shots, so the treasures will naturally be managed by you. As long as you occasionally give me some pocket money. After all, surely you won't want to see your husband die of hunger, right?" Huang Yueli rolled her eyes at him coquettishly. "You make it sound as though I've always been mistreating you, as though I've never shared anything with you." Even during her past life, the best piece of profound armament which she refined was not her bell under the moon, but was the clear sky dark cloud sword, which she had specially refined for Mu Chungying then. As she had almost exhausted all of her blood essence and profound energy after refining that sword, she had to recuperate for a year plus before she recuperated to her peak. Speaking of that, she had really not accepted too much money from this man, and instead lost money by wasting a lot of ninth-grade materials on it. Recalling this, she must have really liked him a lot then. Otherwise, she totally could not imagine that she would do such a losing business. Li Moying knew this very clearly, so he eagerly leaned close to her. Yes, 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 my wife treats me the best. Don't you talk rubbish. Who is your wife? We're not even married yet." Huang Yueli complained. Li Moying laughed. "Sooner or later you'd be mine." This overbearing declaration had exchanged for two white eyeballs without any accident. Li Moying's guess wasn't wrong. Huang Yueli had indeed carefully observed the cave dwelling's layout and knew the location of where the rare treasure could possibly be located. This was not entirely based on profound energy or soul trace, but based on her expertise as a ninth-rank armament master. In order to guarantee the cave dwelling's safety and nature concealment, the distribution of the layout and structure of the mechanisms in the cave were extremely meticulous, so only she alone was able to find out the exact situation in the first moment. Li Moying's cultivation was much higher than hers, but in this aspect, he totally could not be comparable to her at all. You can also listen on. Huang Yueli was in the front leading the way, while Li Moying followed behind her closely. The both of them walked past the front courtyard and towards the back of the corridor, finally stopping in the front of an extremely ordinary room door. After Huang Yueli stopped, her face revealed a grave expression. "If I'm not wrong, the bright ray which was caused by that rare treasure should be in this room." Li Moying couldn't help but frown. "But even if it's me just standing here now, I also can't sense the situation inside the room." Senses towards treasures were mainly related to soul trace, and Li Moying's soul trace was extremely powerful. By right, they were just separated by a thin wooden door, so it shouldn't be possible that he couldn't sense the rare treasure inside. Huang Yueli's expression turned even graver, but the entire cave dwelling's best spiritual spot is right here. In order to maintain the array outside the cave dwelling from operating normally, an important treasure must be placed inside so that it can maintain the entire array's profound energy balance. If even you can't sense it, her slender brows creased slightly, that could only mean that this room has been set up with an extremely powerful invisible array. Either this room's rare treasure itself had the attribute of concealing itself, but if it's the latter, then things will be rather difficult to handle. Ordinary treasures naturally couldn't conceal itself. The higher grade the treasure, the more powerful, imposing manner it would emit, and even if it was a distance far away, one would still be able to sense it. In order to conceal it, it would entirely depend on the various methods which the treasure's master had exerted. If a piece of treasure was actually able to conceal its own presence, that would only mean that this piece of treasure had already developed its own spiritual nature which meant that the rare treasure in this room was at least a half-god relic. Lemoyne stared at her little face as he asked, "Then what should we do?" "No choice. Now that we're unable to use our soul trace to sense the interior, we can only attempt to decode the entrance's mechanisms and array to first open the door and then check out the situation inside. As usual, I'll be responsible for opening the door and you're responsible for protecting me." Huang Yueli raised her head as her gaze met the man's sight. Lemoyne nodded in head in seriousness. "Rest assured, I'll protect you well." Hearing this man's words always made her feel assured. Huang Yueli revealed a smile as she hurriedly coughed to hide it. "All right, then I'll start." The minute she finished her words, her expression immediately turned solemn as her gazes were slightly congealed while she concentrated fully. Her right hand rose up and drew out an incantation gesture in mid-air as her fingers turned and flew, throwing it out towards the middle of that room's door. Immediately following that, strokes after strokes of incantation gestures were like flowing water as it went on continuously. Her footsteps also kept on changing along with the variations, coordinating with the movements on her hand. Her sleeves fluttered as she maintained an elegant and calm pose, as though she was dancing. Lemoyne stood behind her on her right as his eyes were fixated on her dancing figure, his gaze profound yet calm. His lyre was indeed very beautiful. Just looking at her decoding the mechanisms was indeed an eye candy, making him unable to shift his eyes away. But he also knew clearly that all these were just a presentation only. Huang Yueli wasn't really dancing, but executing an extremely dangerous mission. You can also listen on. Although on the surface it looked easy without any effort, but in reality, it just took one wrong step and the mechanisms and arrays would be activated immediately. What happened to Green Cloud's sect earlier would occur to them as well. Furthermore, there were only the two of them, and the room in front of them was specially used to store the rare treasure, so the array's might could only be strong. Moreover, extremely strong. Huang Yueli herself was the array decoder, and the risk she had to take on was the largest. If anything were to happen, she would be the first to face the music, suffering a serious backlash. So she could not afford to make any mistake. Lemoyne knew that his little fiancé excelled in this aspect, but he still wasn't at ease, and he had been cautious and anxious all the while. Even if Huang Yueli had usually easily succeeded 10,000 times, but it just needed that one failure for her to be heavily injured, and that was something which he couldn't afford to happen. Luckily, Huang Yueli's decoding process this time round was extremely smooth and no accidents of any sort had happened. She had struck out several incantation gestures consecutively and plotted out the array patterns. After 1 hour later, the profound energy fluctuations on her had evidently become weaker. Apparently with her 5th stage realm cultivation, she wasn't able to take on the exhaustion liability of decoding this kind of advanced array. But at the same time, the array's intensity was slowly becoming weaker as it became less threatening gradually. Finally, after a flash of ray shot passed, the room door suddenly opened up without any breeze. Huang Yueli heaved a sigh of relief. "That's great. It's finally open. This array is simply too complicated. I'm so tired." Her eyes abruptly turned wide while she was talking halfway. A blue-purplish lightning suddenly zipped out from the room, and with lightning-fast speed, it seemed like a bolt of flash as it suddenly charged towards her. But Lemoyne's reaction was even faster. Just at the instant when the blue light appeared, he had already grabbed the amethyst light sword with his backhand, while the other hooked around Huang Yueli's waist, pulling her back and throwing her to one side. As the situation was pretty urgent, Lemoyne's actions seemed rather rough. Huang Yueli was thrown aside by him as she almost fell down. She stumbled for several steps before she forcibly steadied her body. She hurriedly turned back to take a look, and upon one gaze, she gave off a shocked expression. That bolt of purple light that zipped out ferociously from the room had turned into a huge virtual image in the middle of the courtyard, reflecting a magical beast state. This magical beast was several feet tall and its eyes gave off a lightning kind of eye-piercing lightning ray as the scales on its entire body gave off a dazzling yet cold phosphorescent glow, making it look exceptionally dangerous. This is the Qilin's spiritual beast? Huang Yueli was overwhelmed with amazement as her face changed colors. The first time she recalled was when they first activated the cloudy Qilin mystic region. They had seen the totem of a Qilin spiritual beast on the empty grounds at the mystic region's entrance, whereas this was exactly the same as the carving which they had seen earlier. Huang Yueli's face turned pale as the imposing manner which was emitted from this Qilin had already reached the grade of a matured spiritual beast. Just as she was in a daze, Li Moying had already started to engage in a battle with this Qilin. His peerlessly handsome face was even colder than usual as his gaze was deep-set and grave. His profound energy had entirely been adjusted as it kept on taking in the thunder attribute profound energy from several miles within the radius, gathering towards his body. You can also listen on. Momentarily, the entire courtyard was filled with invasive thunder attributed profound chi, a spiritual beast Qilin, adding on to the suppression of Li Moying's profound energy gathered in this small space, and the feeling of suppression was something which was indescribable with mere words. Even Huang Yueli was starting to not be able to take it as her complexion slowly turned pale as her chest started to throb with a dull pain. But she wasn't willing to retreat, nor could she leave this place, because Li Moying was still engaged in the battle with the virtual image of the Qilin, so she absolutely would not retreat alone. But in order not to drag Li Moying down, she hid herself behind a pillar and worked up her cultivation method, trying to resist against that one-man and one-beast suppression while concentrating fully on the battle, hoping to get a chance to aid Li Moying. Just as this moment, Qilin raised up its huge paw and an extremely severe lightning struck towards Li Moying. That lightning was extremely thin and it looked like a glowing embroidery needle, but it was exceptionally bright, so bright that just another look more at it would result in instant blindness. Huang Yueli anxiously widened her eyes because based on her experience, she naturally could tell that this bolt of lightning had not become so thin because it was weak, but rather it was because all the profound energy was compressed within such a small space, hence the minute one was struck, the consequences would be dire. Even for a genius like Li Moying would probably be heavily injured. The courtyard space was really too small, and Li Moying wasn't able to evade in time, so he could only raise his sword to meet it, but as the distance between both parties' profound energy wasn't very huge, he was still sent flying as his body crashed against the wall. That bolt of lightning struck his chest directly and entered his body. Huang Yueli was so shocked that she immediately jumped up. Such a powerful thunder attributed profound energy directly entering his body. How would that do? If something bad was to happen, his internal organs and meridians would be scorched until it broke up into inches. She clenched her teeth as she immediately wanted to rush over to help. But just at this moment, the surroundings of Li Moying's body appeared a layer of faint purplish light, enveloping him right in the middle. Li Moying, who should have been coughing up blood from the serious injury, did not show any pain on his face. On the contrary, he gave an astonished and shocked expression. He stretched out his hand to cover the chest area where he was struck and couldn't help but went into a blank. Just as this moment, the Qilin immediately pursued over as it continued to make its moves. Huang Yueli had already dashed out by half a footstep when she suddenly stopped. Looking at Li Moying's lively looks, it seemed that he was all right. What was going on? Just within this short moment, Li Moying and the spiritual beast Qilin had changed several rounds. Li Moying's senses were originally grave, but as time went by, he was dealing with it with much ease. Huang Yueli was also very anxious right from the start, and she slowly started to calm down. At the same time, she was able to tell that something was not right. Ancient spiritual beasts each led in their own regions, and all the spiritual beasts had attributes. For example, Huang Yueli's little phoenix was of the fire attribute, so apparently this Qilin's virtual image was of thunder attribute. Extremely coincidentally, Li Moying was also of the thunder attribute, among the same kind of attributed practitioners, as they could mutually take in part of the other party's profound energy, so the damage they could cause was normally much lower as compared to normal circumstances. Moreover, under the circumstances where their cultivations were close, the one who gained victory would normally not be the one who had a stronger cultivation, but the one who was more outstanding in terms of attribute innate talent. You can also listen on. Huang Yueli should have known this point much earlier, but right from the start she had assumed that the Qilin spiritual beast's thunder attribute, innate talent, would definitely be higher than Li Moying's, because it was after all an ancient spiritual beast. But the scenarios which happened later on made her rather stunned, because the person who slowly gained an upper hand was actually Li Moying. This meant to say that Li Moying's thunder attribute, innate talent, was above the ancient spiritual beasts. What kind of innate talent was that? What kind of potential was that? Even if Huang Yueli self-admitted that her innate talent had surpassed most people and that she had been through huge waves, but just the thought alone left her trembling in fear. Wasn't Li Moying a little too perverse? At this moment, Li Moying and the Qilin spiritual beast were entering the end of the battle. Li Moying had based his innate talent to deflect most of the Qilin's damage, and even in this abundant thunder attributed profound Qi environment. He kept on absorbing the energy from the surroundings to build up his own power. Under this kind of huge pressure battle to improve himself, his speed became faster and faster as his moves were getting more and more precise and overbearing. Huang Yueli's eyes grew wider and wider, because Li Moying seemed as though he was entering the state of advancement again. It had only been half a year since he advanced in his 7th stage, and right now, he was going to break through to 7th stage realm 6th level. According to this speed, he would be able to break through to the 9th stage realm in under 2 years. Even when he was in his previous life, the speed of advancement was much slower and was totally incomparable. Li Moying's imposing manner was getting stronger and stronger, whereas the Qilin spiritual beast's power was gradually becoming weaker and weaker under his attacks. Roughly after 2 hours, Huang Yueli could see from her naked eyes that the virtual image of the Qilin was becoming more and more illusory and blurry. This was the display that its energy was becoming weaker and weaker, and that meant that its battle power had already dropped drastically. Huang Yueli heaved a long sigh as she knew that they should be able to get past this stage. Indeed, Li Moying's last consecutive moves lit up the sky in dazzling rays, making one become blurry-eyed, and lastly a sword glint stabbed viciously into the Qilin's heart. With a pung sound, the purplish lighting which enveloped the Qilin's virtual image was completely shattered by him. The virtual image turned into specks of thunder attributed energy as it slowly dissipated into the sky. Li Moying's face revealed a smile as he kept his sword. Huang Yueli immediately pounced towards him as she anxiously checked on him from head to toe. "Moying, are you all right?" To a practitioner, this standard of external injury was easily healed. Seeing his little fiancée getting so worried and anxious, Li Moying was touched, but he also found it a little comical. All right, stop being so tense. The injuries I've suffered in the past were much heavier than this, and you were never that tensed. Now what happened?" Huang Yueli retorted angrily. How could that be the same?" The smile in Li Moying's eyes grew deeper as he leaned in closer to her, speaking out softly. "What's not the same?" Huang Yueli felt her face burning up due to his closing in, and at the same time, felt embarrassed from his question. Not the same, of course not the same. She hated this man in the initial stages in her past life, feeling that his character was too overbearing and he didn't know how to respect her. Furthermore, he was extremely full of himself, thinking that since he was the #1 top expert in Soaring Heaven's continent, then she must marry him. So during that time when he was injured because of her, she would silently say that he deserved it. But not too long after, her feelings underwent a change. Li Moying saw her silence and roughly guessed the thinking in her mind as his lips gave off a gentle smile, slowly leaning in closer to her. Just as their lips were about to meet, Huang Yueli suddenly regained her senses as she subconsciously pushed him at his chest area. Sis. Li Moying immediately gave a sharp cry as his expression became twisted from the pain. Lyra, are you trying to murder your own husband? Huang Yueli realized that she had done something wrong as she bit her lips in embarrassment. Earlier, she got a little too worked up and had forgotten the fact that Li Moying was still injured. Especially the wounds on his chest area were not just a little. So this push probably made that man want to throw up blood, right? She hurriedly retrieved medication pills from the Sky Phoenix ring and stuffed it into his mouth while explaining, this blood-inducing pill is most effective for treating excessive bleeding symptoms. And this 9-Carlgren intermittent ointment is for applying on your external wounds. Quickly apply some. It's really very effective. If it's purely an external wound, you'd recover completely within 3 days, not leaving any scars behind. Looking at his own fiancée's anxious expression, Li Moying felt a warmth rising in his heart. Huang Yueli did a basic first aid treatment on Li Moying's wounds, and later on, as she still wasn't rest assured, she kept asking him on his condition. Li Moying hurriedly replied, "Rest assured, I'm really fine and I won't take my own body as a joke. First stop busying yourself. Now that the secret room's door is finally opened, shouldn't we be taking a look inside to see what's hidden in it? All right, treasure." Huang Yueli jumped up only to recall that she had forgotten the most important thing. She hurriedly turned around and ran towards the secret room. Li Moying looked at her departing figure comically as he shook his head. How would his little money grubber miss any chance usually to make money from the treasures? But now, because of the fact that he was injured, this young lass had completely forgotten about the treasure which was within reach and had been intertwining on that little injury of his. He especially liked this arrogantly pampered hypocrisy. After the Cheelant's virtual image had been crushed by Li Moying, the secret room's door had opened up entirely. Although Huang Yueli was anxious to see what was inside, but she was after all an experienced practitioner, so she remembered that she had to act carefully and cautiously. As she walked, she kept on checking the distribution of the surrounding mechanisms, ruling out the various dangers that could possibly exist. You can also listen on. Li Moying was especially reassured while he followed behind her as the two of them walked into the room. This secret room looked extremely ordinary on the exterior, but upon walking inside, they discovered that its space was much bigger than what they had imagined. The place nearer to the door had 2 vertical rows of altars raised high up, and each row laid 6 pieces of profound armaments in order. These profound armaments were all 9th-tier upper-grade armaments, and the 6 pieces were a set. One was for increasing attack power, while the other was to increase defense. Huang Yueli walked to the front, and when she saw these, her eyes instantly lit up. To tell the truth, the refinement of 9th-grade profound armaments was a difficult process for each piece, and in the past 100 years or so in Soaring Heaven's continent, only she was able to refine it. Needless to say, 9th-grade profound armament set was to refine all 6 pieces into an entire set. The amount of profound energy exhausted was not a mere simple 6 folds, but at least a total of 20 to 30 folds. This astonishing exhaustion was something that even Huang Yueli could not afford. So she could at most refine a 3-piece set of 9th-tier lower-grade armament, and that was already a top-range quality profound armament within Soaring Heaven's continent. Whereas for now, appearing right here was a 6-piece 9th-tier upper-grade profound armament set. If one could equip oneself with those at the same time, it would probably exhibit the same effect as a half-god relic. The value of it was something which didn't require more talking. That's great, I knew it. For a large clan like the Cloudy Cheelan clan, the things that they left behind in the Mystic region must be good stuff. We haven't made a wasted trip this time around. Her mood was extremely good, and she stretched out her hand to pick up the profound armaments on the altar one piece after another, and after observing it for a moment, she blatantly kept it in her own space, not leaving a single piece for Li Moying. Lemoyne totally treated as though nothing had happened as he smiled, lightly standing behind her. Seeing her moving excitedly to explore around the place, he kept his security senses tight just in case some accidents happened, and he was still able to react in time to protect his lure. Huang Yueli kept all the profound armaments carefully and turned back to take a look at him, asking curiously, "Why? You let me keep it all away? Aren't you going to ask me what I want to do with it?" Speaking of that, these ninth-tier upper-grade profound armaments were all of the Thunder attribute. The main reason probably being the fact that most of the Cloudy Qilin clan were of Thunder attribute. So the most suitable person to use them was Lemoyne. If Huang Yueli were to use them, she might not be able to exhibit even half of the effects at all. Moreover speaking, when both of them entered the mystic region, Huang Yueli didn't say anything as she just kept everything away. If it was another person, he would have had a huge fight with her over it long ago. Even a biological father, son, or brothers would turn into foes immediately. Lemoyne gave a disapproving smile as he replied, "You have your reasons for taking it. Perhaps after it went through your hands, the power of the profound armament would become even stronger, and I'd be the one gaining the advantage." Huang Yueli heard that, and knew that this man's heart was linked to hers as he could tell her intentions in one look. Although she wasn't able to use the 9th-tier upper-grade profound armament set, but as a 9th-rank armament master, she was extremely interested in the structure and refining method of the profound armament, so she was thinking of doing some research on it before giving it to Lemoyne. Besides that, Huang Yueli had collected some ancient methods to attach magic onto the 9th-tier profound armaments, and after she had treated it successfully, she would return it to Lemoyne. The effects would definitely be much better than now. She was thinking of that in her heart and did not say it out, but she had not expected that Lemoyne had already guessed her motive. You can also listen on. Evidently, it was a living little thing. Huang Yueli sensed something and observed the surrounding situation. After she made sure that there was no problem, she shot upwards like an arrow and lifted up the rug. Underneath the rug laid a small little magical beast which curled up. It was only a foot long, and its entire body was filled with fine scales. But its scales were still rather fine and soft, and those little pieces were exceptionally dazzling. Under the surrounding fire sparks, it radiated with brilliant lights, which was extremely beautiful. Huang Yueli took a look and revealed a delighted expression. "Wow, this is a little Qilin. It's so pretty, so adorable." She stretched out her hand and wanted to carry the little Qilin, but whoever knew that her slender fair finger was just about to touch that dazzling scale, when she suddenly felt an enormous amount of energy exploding from that little Qilin. She was caught unawares and immediately sent flying back from the shock. You can also listen on. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.